All right. Welcome everybody.
Hi.
Let's collectively unmute our mics and welcome Luisa Jung to the session.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Thank
Hi.
you so much for being with us today. I'm going to go ahead and enable the waiting room so that folks can just filter in when they need to. This is, what is this, the eighth iteration of the Common Ground Artist Lecture Series. And then today's episode will be Luisa Jung, and Argentinian illustrator living in Germany, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
correct.
So I'm super excited to talk with you and to hear your presentation, where you started and how you got to where you are now, making some really interesting and compelling images for a variety of editorial clients. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have Luisa's presentation here that's ready to go.
Well, my name is Luisa Jung. I'm an illustrator from Buenos Aires, and I'm based in Cologne, Germany. And I'm here to walk you through my journey towards becoming an illustrator. It all started in the mid-'80s in Buenos Aires, Argentina. What you see here are the pages of my travel diary and the what I did of my hometown when I was already living abroad, like as a tourist in the hometown. Why did I pick these images to start as a starting point? It's because my travel diaries, or I don't know if you call it scrapbooks or whatever, like those are the medium that have been constant, like those have been a constant throughout my whole life. I have been doing them since I was very young, and they have evolved in style with me. I tried like collage photography, drawing, sewing, embroidery, you name it. And this is something that has always accompanied me throughout the years. I am what Germans would call a Quereinsteiger. It's a word to define someone entering a field of work that's different from their educational background. I studied architecture in Buenos Aires, got a degree there. It was a really interesting time of my life. I met a lot of people, made friends, long-lasting friendships. And even though it was like really intense and interesting, throughout that process of throughout my studies, I started having like some doubts whether that was the path that I would like to keep on like going forever. So, but anyway, I still finished my degree, and once I was done with that, I decided to move abroad. One thing during my architecture studies, I stopped drawing for fun. Like I had been doing that all the years before, and during that time, I was drawing architectural plans and all those things, but I wasn't drawing at all like for myself. I was doing photography, but no drawing. When I finished my studies, I decided to do an experience abroad and applied for an internship in Berlin. And well, it was a really strange time and interesting as well. Like I discovered that I had like time again after very intense years of studying, and I kind of started very timidly at first to draw again, but like I had been drawing all these years, but not really in that way, and I think the space of being abroad alone like created like a space that allowed me to go back to it. And after the first year, well, like the first years in Germany were of course hard, learning the language and adapting myself to this new place. So I spent a lot of energy doing just that. But the next one, when all this adaptation was behind me, and I had like somewhat of a routine, even though I was working very long hours in architectural offices, doing competitions. I started having like this itch that I needed to do something else, that the architecture was not enough. So I started attending weekend workshops for woodblock printing, and I started doing collage again, something that I had done when I was a teenager. I started picking that up, and then I started showing it online, and that led to my first show that was like a show in a very small venue in a city close to Cologne. But a lot of people from my office came, and I sold like many artworks, and that was a great motivational kick for me, and I wanted more after that. Okay, yeah, here you see the kind of things I was doing at that time, and so it came this time where I thought, okay, I have to make a decision. Do I want to keep this as a hobby? Would this be a hobby, or do I want more? So of course I had to narrow down the goal, because the art world is extremely broad, and there's a big span of things you can do or want to do. And by that time I had been following a lot of illustrators, and I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. It was like not only this art, like this expression and the importance of the idea, but also like dealing with text, dealing with like other languages. I had been studying languages all my life. It was something like a lot of things of my interests came together in illustration. So, but I realized I couldn't really, I don't know, get a portfolio done or like really do it seriously if I was working like I was working like the amount of hours, and especially like the long nights and the weekends. And so I decided to go ask my bosses to let me go part-time, and they were really nice about it, and I could. So I decided I needed to get an agent to like I had been asking around how do people start in this industry, and in Germany it seemed that it was only with an agent, or if you had studied there, maybe the context that you come from school. But so I was like, okay, I need a portfolio, I need to get an agent, and I need to have personal projects to fill my portfolio with. So that was the moment, 2015. I was like, okay, now I will try this, and if I will do this for a couple of years, and if it doesn't work, then I'll just go back to architecture. That will be okay. I just have to try it. So okay, so this is when the plan starts to getting executed, and yeah, I got the agent in 2016, and I applied for agencies with a portfolio that was with a very different style, the style that I'm doing right now. That's in the next slide. You can see that. This is like the first style was this vintage collage that comes from the work that I had been doing, like the personal work, and with thanks to this agent, I got like my first job with Psychologie Heute. That's one of my most dear clients still, and it was so fantastic seeing my work published that I was like, oh, this is definitely, it was clear that this was the path I wanted to pursue. So yeah, so I was working in collage at the time. I started like I didn't have that much work at the time, but like I started noticing like that there were some limitations to this style that I wasn't really liking that much. So I started to realize like I will have to change eventually. Like this is not going to be the style that I will hold forever. And then by that time at the same time, I was working on this personal projects I mentioned before, and that was a children's book that I had started like a lot of years before with a Finnish author, and I had tried doing some images in other, like with woodblock printing style, but by that time my daughter was born, and I realized like it's now or never. I have to really realize, like, give it a try, like with everything I've got. So I decided to pick up that text again and illustrate it from the beginning to the end, and really try to get it published. And I did so, and I started sending like this unpublished book to competitions to see if something worked out. Got a lot of nothing happened for a long time, but then in the next one, I got this email from this Global Illustration Awards saying that this unpublished book had been awarded a prize, and that was such an important moment for me. Not really because of the award is not as well known as others, and I think they stopped actually. This was the last time they gave this prizes, but I had been working like on my portfolio and on this vision or this thing I wanted for so long that it, like, when I got that email, I was like, whoa, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, someone, you know, like, this is going somewhere, or at least this has, everything I've done so far has some kind of value. Like, and you would think you get this award and then afterwards, of course, you get a publishing contract, but it wasn't like that because no one really knew this award. But what it helped is that it gave me the confidence to go and really approach publishers and tell them, hey, this is good, like, you have to. So I went to the book fair and, like, with my printed copy, and really started showing it to some people, and I got a publishing contract that was fantastic. But the book would be published in 3 years, like in 2021. It was like it's a publishing house that doesn't publish that many books per year. So I signed in 2018, but it would take a long time for that to really happen. But it was okay. Like, I was patient. So the next slide, you see some spreads of this book. And that was also like.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Is it okay that I'm interrupting you?
Yeah. Of course.
I've never seen this work of yours. This is exquisite, but particularly this one that you just showed. I've been like fixating on this. It is just so Euro. Like, it's unlike anything that I see our students producing. There's just this. I don't know if disconnect is the right word, but there's this just big difference between what the general student population is producing here in the States versus what's happening overseas. And I don't understand it. I don't know if I ever really understood it. I'm just wondering, like, where that comes from. Like, why is that the way that it is? Like, why aren't my students drawing like this? And where do those influences come from? Like, it seems like you said that you're inspired by a lot of different things, but where did this drawing come from? Like, who are the artists you're looking at when you're making these drawings? Like, had you always been drawing kind of like this as a kid? Because if you look at this, I mean, is this the work that you got? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the work that you submitted to agencies for representation?
Yeah, kind of.
And so this was the work that you got represented with.
Yeah.
And then this. What?
Yeah.
That's such a like, what happened?
No, I think I just let go. With collage, I always thought there was like a kind of a middleman between what I was producing. You know, I had like this idea, and then I had to find the material, and then like, I think I was way too afraid to draw, really. And with this book, I was like, I don't know, some, like, all these things that I had been storing in my head for years, like, started like to come out in a, I don't know. And I think I was like in a more intuitive way. But still, you see that there's still some collage, like there are things like some paper. They're like, I don't know. I don't really know what I was looking at that time. I think there was I did like some domestica courses at first that were good. Like this guy, how is it called? Antonio Serra, I think he's called, a Spaniard. That he also works a lot with ink, and yeah, it's I don't know. Like this book came out of some weird place, but it taught me or it allowed me to draw again. So it was a very liberating experience, I think, and especially because I worked on it and I finished it, and afterwards I showed it to the author. So.
And so do you think you were drawing like this kind of like as a kid?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think till the moment came where I was like kind of started getting more like that. I think that's what happened with architecture school. I was kind of the arty kid in school, and when I went to architecture, everyone was that, and like I started getting kind of self-conscious about the way I drew, and
yeah, because it's a different world, right? I mean, that's something I had wondered. Like when you told me that you went to school for architecture, I thought, oh, okay, so the architecture school may have had an effect on the way that Luisa draws, but I guess maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the effect was that it didn't have an effect.
I don't know. I think architecture school helped me in a lot of like gave me like structure and in a way, but and there are a lot of things that like I identify myself as an architect as well. It's not that, but I don't know. Like, yeah, I think it kind of blocked a part of me. Mm-hmm. While giving me other tools that helped me, and I think that gave me also this discipline to start a project and finish it and see it through.
Yep. That's something that we're talking about quite a bit this semester with our students, is just having the wherewithal and the knowledge on when to close the piece, when to finish the piece, and to know that the piece is finished. And and I imagine that there's also a social component there too, just being in the midst of an architecture program and in Buenos Aires, right? Like that's what you said. Like just having that experience of mingling and interacting with those people who have maybe like similar but also different mindsets to how they approach their work and how they approach imagery. Like I'm sure that also had an impact on you, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, at first I like when I realized I wanted to drop or change my career path, I was kind of, why did I spend this time studying architecture and stuff? But I think like the social component was super important. Like I met a lot of people and we're very, very similar in many ways, like actually, and also like working as a team in a group, even though like the work of an illustrator is very can be kind of isolating, but I think if you have I think it's when you work with art directors and if you have been able to really like get a project done from the beginning to end with a big team, like you become a good team player, and then you can deal also well with criticism and many other components that like things that have to do with the life of an illustrator. So
and that's what many of our students are learning to deal with, is that taking that criticism and voicing their opinions and arguing in healthy ways and defending their own work. And but yeah, this book stuff, like I had never seen this look of yours, and it's rooted in illustration history, which is why I ask what your inspirations were for cultivating this imagery. Like I was just looking at Edward Thoney's work last night, and it seems very inspired from that. Like it feels very Italian, it feels very French, it feels very Northern German Renaissance. And so maybe, and sometimes I think that these inspirations, they're just sort of like ingrained into our heads, whether we realize them or not. Like
now that you say that, regarding this particular book, like I'm really interested in medieval art.
There you go.
like I hated it as a kid. I thought always like that Gothic art was like really like I hated like this long hands and like this very pale faces. And then as an adult, I was really blown away by that. And Cologne was a city that was very important in the Middle Ages, and they have like good museums with like a lot of I know stuff where they like these paintings where they show like the life of a saint or so, and then they have like this how do you call it, like balloon, how do you call it, you know, here where the guy's talking and he has like this speech bubble.
Oh yeah. It's like a word bubble.
Yeah, word bubble, but with a, you know, made out of a ribbon.
Yeah.
And I was always like really interested in that, and also, yeah, I wanted something that was really reduced in the palette, in the color palette, and that you could understand. Okay, it's raining outside. Outside is blue, and it's like it has been flooded, and inside it's just like this red and this gray and this yellow, and you don't need anything else. Like it has to be, and yeah, like
that's exactly what I was curious about. So yeah, the dots are connecting here, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's one of the, and you had mentioned this earlier. You said that you mentioned letting go, you know, like I just let go, and I think that's really difficult for a lot of people, the young aspiring illustrators. I think oftentimes they hold on to the foundation's principles, and it makes it difficult for them to produce something that's really original and unique. And you know, like I have students who will spend hours trying to make sure that these buildings here are in perspective and, you know, working perfectly, and but then and then as a result it loses the charm.
Yeah, that's a problem. Like I understand, I worked a lot on that image because I was like, I wanted it to be correct because that's the architecture in the architect in me. But then I was like, who cares?
Yeah, there you go.
But I had to do, I drew that in a more like a correct way. I was like, no, but it doesn't, like, you don't understand it, that like, it's not as appealing as an image. What I did with this book was I drew things like very, very small. And I was like, I would here like to have like these 3 arches, for example, in the lower image of the girl with the like walking and how you like work. Yeah, that one. I just drew like this arches, like super, super small. And then when I was like, when I blew the image like bigger, I wanted, like, I changed it. No, I was like, this is incorrect. This looks weird. But then it never, like, I went back to the thumbnail. The thumbnail was better. And I was like, yeah, I actually, who cares?
Yeah. That's good advice.
But because there's some things that you just do them like automatically, and you have to like trust your instinct. And when you just want to get it like this has to be correct, then something is missing. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, for sure. I think that what you're describing there is the difference between foundations oriented drawing and having a voice, you know, like, and that was something I had spoken to some of my students about recently, was the idea of, you know, you can't own hatching and cross hatching. Like you can't copyright or own a particular form of mark making that is impossible to trace the origins of, or at least from my perspective is impossible to trace the origins of. But you can design those marks in a way that people can identify with you, and think like, oh, okay, that's the way that so-and-so does hatching, or that's the way so-and-so does cross hatching or scundling and so on. And so I think that, yeah, there's truth to that, you know, like you can, it's the difference between those two worlds is, you know, one is trying to replicate things as they exist in nature, and the illustrator is trying to show you how they see nature and how they see things. So I think that's a really good point. So yeah, I'll let you keep going. I'm sorry. I want
no problem. I keep going till you stop me. It's no problem at all. I have to say, like, I think it is different when you're studying, because you are like, okay, I have time to develop this. But by that time, like I had tried doing this like many times, like working on this book. I had other like I had tried other layouts, other things, but by this time of my life, I was like, I didn't want to waste any time. I was like, now I have to do it. Like I can't like keep on working like 2 more years on this book. Like I have to give myself like this amount of months, and then it has to be done, you know, because if not, it would be like forever, you know. I had like this kind of time pressure, which made it like more, I don't know, I became more effective or efficient. So,
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, I think that illustration tends to do that, particularly the editorial stuff. Just forces you to stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So those things had been happening, and as I said before, you can go to the next one. As I said before, I had been already noticing the limitations of the style. I was still like really not. I don't know. I didn't want to drop completely collage, but I was like, I needed to develop another style. I realized also by like the clients, they, I don't know, I think I couldn't get that much work just working as a collage artist. So I decided to start working on my new style that was more direct and just like let go. I think, as I said, all this whole process of working on this book had like awakened some part of me then, and made me more like, yes, I can do it. So the next one, I started working on a personal project to like kind of develop this style, and this is an example of this project that's called Wortwörtlich, and they're like my favorite German words. Like German is a very complicated language and has like one of the crazy, like really interesting, you can combine like concepts to make words. So their results are really interesting. And with this series, I started like trying to get more work. And in the next one, you see, I contacted Forbes Argentina, and they weren't commissioning illustration at the time, but I was pretty insistent, and then I got like I got like commissions, like kind of regular commissions from them, and that was a great thing for me. I started getting like real practice and in topics that maybe weren't my main focus, and the main thing, like the most important thing, is that I got like things published, and I could send it like to competitions, and you know, creating like kind of a body of work, and also expanding my portfolio in this new style that I found way more exciting than collage. Like in the next one, you see that, and then I as I said, I was really trying to get more work, and my brother was publishing his book. He's a doctor, and he was publishing a book on neurology, and I was like really, I offered to make the cover for his book, and one of the co-authors saw my work there, and he said he was working on another book, and if I wanted to make his cover, and of course I agreed, and then he liked the cover and asked me to do one chapter illustration, and then he asked me to do all the illustrations of every chapter, and that was like the biggest job I had gotten so far. And it happened because kind of one thing leads to another, and and there was I grew a lot during this project. It was really with a super tight deadline, and I had to like draft a contract myself and stuff, and I hadn't done those things before, and that was good. I learned a lot, and and this project was shortlisted in the World Illustration Awards, and also exhibited in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Like it was really, this project is very dear to me, like opened some doors, and so these things, like things started happening, and the next one Okay, so by that time, with all the work from Forbes Argentina, this Brave Fables and like my personal series, I had like kind of a portfolio that was really looking way more professional. So I also realized that if I wanted to really make a living out of illustration, I had to broaden my like the markets I was working with, because Germany is still a kind of small market. So I decided to look for an agent in the US, and I was lucky enough that my first choice also wanted me. So I signed with Richard Salzman, and I'm very, very happy working with him. And well, this since I signed with him, like a couple of months later, I had got my first job for the New York Times and Washington Post. And like, yeah, that's a lot of things changed since, and many I started working with like interesting clients. In the next one you can see well, these are like my favorite work from 2021, and you see proportionally in the next one how that changed, like from to 2022. Like I started getting like more and more work, and yeah, well, this is where I'm right now. As you see, it has been like quite a long journey, like I would say like over 10 years, like trying to get here. And yeah, I don't know, I hope I can keep on working as an illustrator. And yeah, I would like to, well, I would like to keep on like learning new skills. Like that's how I met Tony in this animation course, and meeting new fellow illustrators. And yeah, well, that's it from my part.
Thank you so much. What's your experience with you said Richard Solomon, right?
Salzman.
Oh, okay. What's been your experience with your agent in the States? Are you represented overseas and in the States as well?
Yes, but I have my but in Germany and Argentina, no. I'm like those are my home markets.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're repped in several different places.
Yeah, no, here like in Germany and Argentina, I'm doing that by myself.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and
so Brain Fables. So Brain Fables, that was like your entire commission. Like an agent didn't take anything from that.
No, that was before. No, I did that all by myself. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been like with your agent in the States?
Yeah, I've been like it's a small agency, so I like that the fact that I can call him, and like he's very like he has a lot of experience, and he's really nice person. So I like, for me it has been like really a super positive experience. It still is. And yeah, not only because he deals with like invoices and payments, but also like how to deal with clients, or how to like, I don't know, to which shows it makes sense to like to submit work, or I don't know. It's like I've learned a lot from his experience, and I think he's a very good person and a good professional. I heard you talk about your agent, that you also had like that you also really liked her and had a good relationship with her.
Yeah, that's, I mean, what you just said those were things I was looking for when it came to representation. I wanted a small agency, and I wanted somebody who was available, who I could text and call and formulate a relationship with. I didn't want to get lost in a roster, like a giant roster of artists. So yeah, and it's something that I like to ask people too, because I know that there's a lot of different mixed reviews on agents, and illustration agencies, and I think it's good for the students to hear other people's experiences with agents, because it's one of those things where it's like, if you're a graphic design major or an advertising major or whatever it may be, an animation major, and you want to pursue those fields, the agent is somebody who can help propel your illustration career while you're doing those other things. So I think that's it's always a point of interest for me to ask and think about that. Um, can we go back to something really quick? I wanna see this really quick. This I was really interested in. Let's see here. Yes. Like, can you expand on the personal exercise here with the German words and the phrases? Like, maybe
Yeah.
tell us what each one means.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, since when I moved to Germany, I could speak a bit of German, but not really. And since like I've always love like words and concepts, and you know, in English you can say like ice cream and you hyphen it, and you have like these two words linked. And in German you don't need that; you just can link them, and so create those words. And I don't want to say that these words are unique to the German language, because that's not true. Like for example, the top right is this girl looking up. That's Mauerblümchen, and that's like, I think the translation in English would be wallflower. Okay, you have that in English, but in Spanish we don't have that. For example, if you I will just say it in order for like from left to right. Like the first one is Betriebsblind. That's a person who has been looking, like, it's an expression that means you have been looking at your work for way too long, and you just stop seeing the mistakes. So.
Oh wow, the way that you the way that you showed that is so funny. It's like
and a Betrieb means like industry or something. So that's why I put, and that's something we always had when we were about to turn in competitions. We kept on looking at the plans, and we didn't see the mistakes anymore because we were Betriebsblind, and I really like that. That was, I think, the first one I did. And the second one is Feierabend. It's like, that's a concept that I only know in German. That's the time after work. You know, so people would ask you like, are you doing Feierabend? Like, it means, are you leaving work now and starting like the rest of your life, or your day that doesn't involve work, you know?
oh, okay.
So that's Feierabend. And the next one is Kopfkino. It's like mind cinema, or like your movie you play in your mind, you know, when you're like just like overthinking something or imagining like things. That would be like Kopfkino, like your mind projecting like a movie. I don't know, like.
That's great. Well, how do you pronounce that one?
Kopfkino. Kopf is head, and Kino is cinema. So.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of almost like daydreaming.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it could be something, but it usually involves like that you're like kind of overthinking something, and maybe just like taking it too far. Like, you know, I know a friend texts you something and you think, oh, maybe he means something else, but like that's a Kopfkino, like your head going like imagining things that are maybe way too complicated, you know? It's not, it's kind of negative, I think, in a way. Yeah. Well, then Mauerblümchen, like wallflower. Then the other one is Schlagfertig. That's like when someone is like, you know, the people that have the capacity, I don't have it at all, like to, you say something kind of, I don't know, maybe, you know, like the kind of, I don't know if bitchy would be the way, like to say something that it's kind of naughty, or like maybe throws you like something you didn't expect, and that people can react and say the right thing right away. Like, you know, the people that have like this kind of reaction, you know, not only to a joke or maybe to someone being rude, that they can just like make them like realize, hey, you can't mess with me, you know, instead of people that have like this slow reaction. So that's a Schlagfertig, like ready to punch would be like the word-to-word translation, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then the next one is Sparfuchs. It's like the people that are really really watching like the money, and like seeing, like really trying not to give more money, or trying to always get the bargains. And that is like a saving fox would be the translation, so Sparfuchs. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the other one is Spargelzeit. There's like Germans have like this love for asparagus, and they're always like saying when this the time of asparagus, like you just have to go and buy asparagus. It's Spargelzeit. It's like it's the time of year, and I was always like really surprised about the love of like how much they love it, because I don't think it's such a great thing. But yeah, they're always like in a very good mood when it's time to buy asparagus.
That's awesome.
And then the last one is Zukunftsmusik. That means music of the future. And this is a word that is used to, for example, when you're like, I don't know, I would like to buy a car, but what if I buy it and then the car has like these problems and then I have to pay for that? And like, how will I do that? And you're just like way too, you're just thinking about future problems that are way too far away. Like, and you would say that's music of the future, you know, like, don't worry about that.
Yeah. It's like, why do anything?
Yeah. And you're like, come on, those are like, this is way too far away. You're just like wasting time on something that, you know, the future problem. So that would be.
Yeah. What a fun exercise.
This I wanted to show, like, you will see the demo of how I make the final piece of this illustration. This was commissioned by Washington Post on an article about a crypto scam that's called Big Butchering. And like the scammers look for their victims online, especially in Tinder or social media apps. And they like kind of build a relationship, and then they just like take the money, like in some crypto way. I don't know. But well, and this is the sketch, and in the next one you see like the color test when I decide how the colors will be. And then in the next one you see final art and yeah, the published piece, and then you will see the demo. Yeah.
And so this is in Procreate, correct?
Yeah, I draw in Procreate, and yeah, Procreate is really I don't know, it gave like the right interface for me to really start drawing digitally. Before I had a Wacom, and I was like really not feeling it really, and but Procreate is great.
There was I don't know if do you know George Pratt?
No, not really.
George Pratt is affiliated with the Visual Arts Passage and John English and the Illustration Academy. He's a great illustrator, and great figure drawer too, like life drawing artist. Like his figure drawings are beautiful. But he once told me, or I don't think he told me, but he made a declaration on social media that the reason he loves Procreate is because it just gets out of the way, is what he said. Said, I love Procreate because it just gets out of the way. And I think that was such a great like observation, because it's true. You know, it's a drawing app. It's not it's not Photoshop. It's meant to help you draw.
That's true. It's so intuitive, and it got more complex like with the years, which is a good thing, because you started to feel the limitations, and it got better. But yeah, it removed like this feeling that there's like, you know, like something in between, you know, like like between what you want to draw and like how it turns out, like
my colleague Doug Dabbs never forgets to remind me that Photoshop is a photo editing software. You know, I mean, there's so much that you can do with it, but that it wasn't made for illustrators. You know, I think that illustrators gravitated towards it because that was what was there, you know.
Of course. And it is, and Photoshop is super powerful. It's incredible. Like, I think I can use it pretty well, but there's so much more to the program. But but it's not, it has like a complexity, and I don't know, like, it's not like, I don't know, it's not made for that, as you say, like
Yeah, there's like, it's very little percentage, I think, that artists use. Like the 2, 3, 4% of Photoshop gets used by my students,
yeah.
and I mean, it's such a big expansive thing. And we are, I think we're really trying, I think one of the things we're really trying to do is get iPads for the students so that the students can work on iPads, because I mean, it just is so, we can then go do things together, like we can go, and many of them do have their iPads, but it's such a great portable sketching tool as well. Like, I mean, not just, I'm still calling it sketching, like it's a just this little sketching tool, but I mean, people are making such great work in Procreate. It's not just a sketching tool.
Yeah, no, the thing that I would want is to be able to work, like, to have like a bigger screen, and of course you have like the limitations of the size of the iPad, but sometimes I would want, like, when I see people working on this very like Cintiq, or that they're like really big screens, I would like, oh, I would like to have Procreate in something like that, but anyway.
Yeah, and there may be a way to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way to connect an iPad to a larger drawing tool like a Cintiq.
Yeah.
I would have to look into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way to do that. This is coming out great. So your agent picked up this gig for you, right?
Yeah, well, they contacted him and told him they wanted me to do this, so yeah.
That's awesome. And so you've had a good experience with your agent. You're able to contact him and talk with him, and clearly he's getting you jobs. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that for me that becomes harder and harder as the years go by is even considering leaving Catherine. It's become so much of a relationship. Like my agent, I just don't think I could ever leave. There's this nostalgia there, and I feel like she helped make who I am, and I think that's just what happens when you get into really good relationships with people. It's like, why would you leave then?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if you stayed with your agent for a really long time, if not forever.
Yeah, no, I really can't complain, and yeah, like I'm happy with it. I understand, like, it might be different if the agent is in the country you are in. Like for me, it's not that I like, I don't know, the jobs that I create here, they're for me, and everything that happens in the US, it's different. But I don't know, I also, as I said, it's not only like all the job, the work he does regarding billing and I don't know, contracts and stuff, but it's also like kind of his opinion, and he, kind of having some kind of support, regarding your career, and advice. Yeah.
And you mentioned that there was a period of time where you lived alone. Was that in Buenos Aires?
There was a period of that I what? Sorry.
Where you lived alone?
In Buenos Aires, no, when I was in Berlin.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because I know that you didn't really expand on it as much, but I'd love to hear you expand on it. Particularly because there was a time where I lived alone, and I grew exponentially, and I think that's worth talking about. I used to live, obviously I think most of us grow up with our families, but then we probably live with other people, and in college I lived with other people, but then there was a time where I lived alone, and it was a strange time. But also looking back on it, like a very transformative time, a time where I learned a lot about myself. I experimented more with art and also music as well, and recording music and making artwork, not just for my classes, but for myself. And I don't know if I realized it at the time, but there was a sense of dread and loneliness that was there. But then also a sense of like feeling like the world is your oyster, or
Yeah.
that you have all the time in the world to create because you don't have anybody that needs you, or at least I didn't feel that way. And I didn't have any distractions, right? Like I didn't have any roommates or anybody. So I had this space, a physical space to exist within. But then also it felt like I had a lot of space freed up in my own head to be as creative as I probably could have ever been. Um, so I wasn't sure if you felt similarly or what your experiences were living alone.
Well, like I was actually living with other roommates, but I wasn't very far away from my family, and they were all studying, so it was kind of a alone time for me. I think more like away from the people I knew. They were around, but it was still a kind of. I grew up in Buenos Aires, and I had all this like friends from school and then from university, and you're like kind of surrounded by family, and because usually if you're in Buenos Aires, people either stay in Buenos Aires or go abroad, but like there are a lot of people around. So it was kind of the first time that I was like kind of, for me, yeah, like alone. Then even though I wasn't like living completely alone, but kind of yeah, having like kind of that time to think about like what do I want to do with my life. Like okay, I finished, I had to get a degree, I got it, that's done. I have a job, and now what? And I remember when I was having my doubts during university. It was always like when I was talking to people, they were always like, "Yeah, you finish your degree, and then you see what you can do, what you want to do. You can decide later." And I was like, "Okay, when is later? When do I have time to decide and maybe change paths?" And those, yeah, I think when you have time to think, like those things that have been kind of hidden, or you haven't had time to really reflect upon, they just pop up to the surface.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I mean, it's a scary question. Like, when is later? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's I think that uncertainty, like my students are feeling it, or at least several of them have expressed to me that they're feeling that feeling of like, well, what happens next? And I think that that's just a product of, or personally, I think it's a product of, they've spent their entire lives going from one level to the next. And, primary school to middle school to high school, it's a very easy transition, I mean, well, yeah. Probably not socially in some regard, but but it's a very easy, methodical transition, very straightforward. Like one year you're in this classroom space and this physical space, and now you're going to be in this other physical space. But I think that transition that happens typically during one's early 20s, from college to the real world, that's a scary one, because it's the first time you're transitioning into something that isn't very tangible, and you have to manifest that transition. And it's not to put anybody down, but oftentimes people aren't ready for that transition. Like they're not matured in a way that's going to allow them to be able to find an opportunity for success. And I think it's a really unfortunate thing. I think that there are quite a few students that we have who are not ready to go, and I wish almost that I had the say to be able to say, no, stay for a little longer. Stay for a little longer until you're actually ready to go, but I don't think anybody really has that power in education. If somebody's passed all the requirements and they're ready to go, it's just really difficult, I guess, to assess whether or not somebody's ready to go. Yeah. But I guess maybe for some people, getting tossed into the deep end is a good way to help them find those answers to those scary questions.
Yeah, I don't think I honestly do not think you find the answer just like by thinking about it. Like you just have to go and live it. Like I wasn't I couldn't have said like I don't want to work as an architect, but I was like I had to go through that and like see, okay, I like, there are so many things I like about the life of an architect, but there are a lot of other things that are not enough. So, but I think I had to go through that personal experience and just like decided for myself, and I couldn't like answer that in theory,
Yeah.
So there's I think there's a lot of things that involve like finding your own path that is just like transiting it and like going through that and saying, no, this is something that I don't want, or and not, you just have to go through that experience. I think Casey's like he has his hand, like,
let's see here.
exactly question.
Oh yeah, I put my hand up.
Oh,
Sorry.
hey Casey.
Hey,
Hi.
I had a question. I think you mentioned like Domestika or Udemy for like courses. Is that kind of what you used mainly when you were getting into illustration, or did you have other avenues that you used?
Well, at first, like, I started with Domestika when it was like there weren't that many courses. Now there are like billions of them. But yeah, like some of them really helped me. I did like this Domestika course from Javier Jaén, I think is an Editorial Illustrator. And that was really like, I learned a lot about art directors in general from that. But then, yeah, like I think there are some interesting courses that others that maybe, like I thought it was interesting. Like I wanted to know how this industry worked, and in this Javier Jaén course, I thought that he was really clear about how to get like a project done from the beginning to the end, and he explained that in a very interesting way. And afterwards, like during the years, I also like watched other courses because I was interested in seeing how he or she worked on this, or like their techniques. So what I like about those courses is that you get like a sneak peek on how people work, and when they explain like their influences, and you like learn about other things. Like the thing that I think is kind of missing there is like feedback. That's super important, and that's why, like when I did this visual arts passage course with Tony, that was super important to listen to his feedback and also see the feedback on other people's work. And I also did a course with Miriam Martinchik that was also super cool, but in type at Cooper, I think. That was an online course. And yeah, like I'm always looking for courses that are like good and interesting and that fit my time zone. That's kind of difficult. I think Tony's course was like 1 a.m. and I only saw the recordings, but yeah, there are like a lot of really good courses online now. That's one good thing about the pandemic, like that this course is really started getting more accessible or more interesting. Does that answer your question? Sorry, it took a lot.
No, you answered it. And I just wanted to say, I love your work. It's amazing. I'm just staring at the computer with my jaw dropped.
Well, thank you very much. That's really nice.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be gained just by talking to the people who are already doing the thing that you want to do. I mean, even I would say that's probably a more unconventional approach to education, but a very useful one too. Like I have a cousin right now who's interested in interior design, and the way he's going about understanding it is by contacting people who are already in the industry and asking them if he can sit down with them for a few hours and just pick their brain on everything they've learned. It's almost kind of like streamlining college. In a very short period of time. And I would even say that some people probably learn better that way too. Like, I mean, I'm sure that there are several of you in here, if not all of you in here, who have felt as if though there's been one or two or three or many aspects of college that just didn't pertain to you at all. So it's almost kind of like, I mean, not to speak against the idea of universities, but it's almost like cutting out the fat, like sifting through all of the content that you don't identify with and that you don't care about, or that you don't even see yourself really even remotely engaging with in the industry, and just getting straight down to the points that you need in order to be effective and successful. So that's something that I recommend, and that's something that I try to like cultivate with these talks too, is that you could take a class in editorial, but there's also something really valuable about just hearing somebody's journey through Editorial. You know, so that's one of the reasons I think it's great that Luisa's here, and sharing that experience, particularly from somebody who's been in so many different physical spaces, but also different mental spaces as well, or different head spaces. So yeah, in addition to things like Domestika and conventional higher education, it's also important to just try and like seek out these people. And when it comes to illustration, I've found that most of the people, if not all of them really, like have been very generous with their time and will talk to you if you reach out to them. So like if you're a fan of somebody's work or whatever it may be, like reach out to them and tell them that and ask them if you can pick their brain for a few hours, you know, even if it means that they give you an hourly rate, you know. It's good to be able to hear other people's perspectives.
Hi, I just had a really quick question. So you said that you use Procreate a lot for your body of work, right?
Yeah.
I was interested to know if like you have any technical difficulties when it comes with when it comes to like the DPI settings and just making sure like everything looks good either for print or for screen, because I know if I print something from Procreate it can come out really grainy. Like have you had any like issues with that in your professional work, and like if so, like how have you dealt with it, or like if it's even a problem at all?
I usually export like the Procreate file, like the biggest file, I think like it's the TIFF, and then I open it in Photoshop and save it as a JPEG. That's what I do usually. Because I think the JPEGs that the Procreate actually like automatically saves, they're not like the highest quality. There's always a kind of a bit smaller than the Photoshop ones. And that's kind of how I do it. I always work with like a higher DPI than the one that I actually need. Because I'm always like, I'd rather make bigger images. And even though the client wants like, I don't know, like a 300 DPI version, I just do it in 400. And then I can keep the image in a bigger size in case I ever need to print it bigger. So just in case, always bigger. That's my motto with Procreate. So yeah.
That's my motto with it, about just about everything.
Yeah.
I don't know why Procreate, the standard Procreate settings for DPI is like 142 or something really small like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I redid my website like in the beginning of this year, and it was like I opened my website that I was working like well, and I realized that it looked super like pixelated in my new screen, and I was like, what's, and it was I realized that it had been like that for a long time, but in my old screen it looked fine. So I realized like all the images, like all the thumbnails had to be like have more than 72 pixels, like, you know, DPI. So it had to be like, I don't know, 142 or something. Something to do with Retina display. So I just changed my whole website recently.
And the student who asked this question, what's your name? How do you pronounce your name?
Oh, it's pronounced me sun. So like me, like the pronoun me, and then sun, like the sun in the sky.
So yeah, Nissan, I haven't had you in class yet, but I heard from Doug that you recently won an award.
I did. I won an Addy. I'm going to the event tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Hey, congrats. Nice to meet you.
Congratulations.
All right. Well, Luisa, thank you so much for your time. Like, you have no idea how much this means to me. And also the students here as well. And I'm sorry that if I was just not fully there with you today. It's the COVID feeling is awful. For any of you who've had it, it's the worst. And I'm sure that you know. But hopefully I was a good host for you. And thank you so much. I would love to do something with you again in the future. And I'm so glad that our paths crossed.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It was this was a really interesting thing to do. And yeah, like.
Yes.
You know?
And I guess that's one of those like great positive things that happens within the illustration community is, you know, you have folks like John English who bring people together, you know, and then it helps us to be able to meet each other. And for those of you who don't know, like, I mean, visual arts passage is a really great, you know, extended learning opportunity for you, particularly those of you who graduate and are still looking for more. You know, visual arts passage is run by John English. And I think it was co-founded by him and his father, Mark English, who recently passed. May he rest in peace. And now it's gotten better, in my opinion. There's more diverse voices in that realm, who are students and also teachers, and you see teachers taking classes with students and students taking classes with teachers, and it's a very, like, I mean, you mentioned Miriam a minute ago, and I don't know if I would have ever met Miriam had it not been for that class.
Yeah. No, that I think like yeah, like this classes, even though I'm so far away from you guys, like really like creates the connection, and if people are willing to, you can really like build a relationship from afar, and it's cool. Like, and I met Miriam in person, so she was in Amsterdam, and that was also, it's cool, you know. And
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Luisa. And thank you everybody for joining. This episode will be up within the next couple of weeks. So you should be able to watch it in its entirety. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Luisa, until we chat the next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, great rest of your year. Stay in touch. And
thank you.
yeah, have
You
a good
too.
weekend, everybody.